the ancient Egyptian calendar was a solar calendar having a fixed 365 days per year. Now the Earth revolves around the Sun at almost exactly 365.256363,004 days, and unlike other calendars that have leap years, wherein the discrepancy is corrected every certain period of time, the Egyptian calendar does not compensate for the 0.256363,004 of a day difference every year. This means the Egyptian New Year is observed one day earlier or slides back one day every approximately 4 years. The Sothic cycle is a period of about 1,461 Egyptian calendar years of exactly 365 days each, which is equivalent to about 1,460 solar years, averaging 365.25 days each. At the end of one complete Sothic cycle, the calendar having 365 days a year loses enough time that the start of its year or its new year once again coincides with the heliacal rising of Sopdet, Egyptian name, or Sothis, Greek and Latin name, which Egyptologists associate with the star Sirius. I said the Sothic cycle is about 1,460 solar years because the start of a new Sothic cycle depends on actual observation of the star rise of Sopdet falling on the day before the Egyptian New Year's Day, and the precession of Earth's equinoxes causes the date of the heliacal rise of stars to move forward slowly in time. For example, the star rise of Sirius was June 18 Gregorian calendar in 3500 BC, but was June 30 Gregorian calendar in 2000 BC, or an advance of 12 days in a period of only 1,500 years, which, by the way, is just 40 years more than the supposed 1,460 years Sothic cycle. Because of this, the actual observed period of the Sothic cycle should be less than the calculated and presumed 1,460 solar years. The Egyptians called the start of a new Sothic cycle a great or divine year, and it corresponds to the life cycle of the sacred phoenix or the Bennu of Heliopolis, which is a symbol of rebirth. Now the first month of the Egyptian calendar is Thoth, which is by name only the first month of the flooding season, which the Egyptians call Akhet. I said by name only because this becomes true solely at the start of the Sothic cycle, when the first day of the first month of Thoth starts on the heliacal rise of Sopdet. Most scholars agree that the Egyptian day began at dawn before the rising of the sun rather than sunrise, and the heliacal rise of Sopdet is sighted during this time. Thus, the Sothic rise falling on the first day of Thoth marks both the end of the previous Sothic cycle and the start of a new one. The concept of a Sothic year comes to us via a Roman author named Censorinus. In 238 AD, he wrote that 99 years before, or in 139 AD, a great year began on the Egyptian calendar, which is based on the motions of Sirius, the dog star, and that it is 1,460 years long. Astronomical calculation definitely dates this heliacal rising to July 20, 139 AD Julian calendar. Theon of Alexandria, who lived a century after Censorinus, agreed with him and declared that the previous Sothic cycle began with the era of Menophress in 1322 to 1321 BC, or exactly 1,460 years before July 20, 139 AD. Armed with that information, the Egyptologists looked for a pharaoh named Menopheres. They settled on Ramesses I because one of his other names was Menpetire. Since Ramses is credited with only a one-year reign, both he and the beginning of the 19th dynasty were initially pegged at 1321 BC, although it has now been revised to 1292 BC. The earliest record of the start of the Sothic cycle can be found in the ivory tablet of Jer, the third pharaoh of the first dynasty of ancient Egypt, whose capital was in Thinis. This heliacal rise was dated by Egyptologists on July 17, 2773 BC Julian calendar. However, this date is too late for Jer's reign, which is dated circa 3000 BC. And this is a big problem because the Sothic cycle was used for absolute dating of the Egyptian chronology, not just for the 19th dynasty under Ramses I, which I discussed earlier, but also for the 18th dynasty and the 12th dynasty. And if the Sothic rise calculation for Jer's reign is too late, then this means the Sothic rise calculation used for dating the other dynasties may be faulty as well. In Jer's ivory tablet, one can find a clear and unambiguous description of the star Sopdet. Note that I omitted any reference to Sopdet being Sirius in the following quote, as I consider it a bias on the part of the author. May a Sothic fault line exist in the civil calendar of Egypt? By Sultan Simon, page 6. His, Jer's ivory tablet, commemorates the heliacal rising of Sothis on the first day of the first month of Akhet, the first season of the year. It is related to a divine day, the beginning of the first Sothic cycle. The star between the horns of the lying cow that represents the New Year or New Year's Day indicates on the tablet that its heliacal rising coincided with the first month of Akhet, day 1. The star between the horns of the lying cow is an obvious reference to the star rise of Sopdet being observed in the constellation Taurus. And I believe this star was also its brightest star, Aldebaran, which is also the right eye of Taurus. Aldebaran was the divine star in the worship of the tribe Nizam in pre-Islamic Arabia. This tribe thought that it brought rain and that its heliacal rising unattended by showers portended a barren year. Also, the traditional name Aldebaran derives from the Arabic word Aldebaran, meaning the follower, because it seems to follow the Pleiades. And according to Arab astronomers, stretching from the left eye to the left ear of the bull or Taurus were the Al-Kalbain asterism, or the two dogs of Aldebaran, which Aldebaran uses to follow the Pleiades. I interpret this to mean that the left eye and the left ear of Taurus that borders the asterism were the two dogs. Epsilon Tauri, an orange giant star formerly named Ayin, or Eye in Arabic, is the left eye of Taurus, while Phi Tauri is an orange-hued star and is one of 5 stars making up the left ear asterism of Taurus, named Al-Kalbain. Phi Tauri is the only star with an orange hue similar to Aldebaran among these 5 stars. Now, in proving my point that Sopdet is Aldebaran, and in disproving that it was Sirius, I will be using 2 methods. The first method I will use is to show that Aldebaran as the star Sopdet fits the Egyptian mythology and symbolisms of their pantheon better than Sirius. The second method I will use is to show that the star rise of Sirius comes after the flooding season in Egypt has already started and therefore late, both in the present time and in ancient times. Whereas the heliacal rise of Aldebaran is a reliable herald of the start of the flooding season in Egypt, both in the present as well as in the distant past. Most people are aware of identifying Sopdet with Isis. However, not many know that Hathor is associated with this ancient mystery as well. The following author is aware of this association, but just like all other Egyptologists, he is biased with identifying Sopdet with Sirius. For this reason, I replaced Sirius with Sopdet encased in brackets in the following quote. Also, everything in brackets are my inserts for clarification of what I am quoting. Absolute chronology of the ancient world from 2840 BCE to 1533 BCE, page 51. The ivory tablet of Jer mentions the oldest known heliacal rising of Sopdet. This astronomical phenomenon is depicted at the figure on the top right by three symbols. The sun Ra above a cow with a ma'at feather on her Hathor's head, amidst two horns and above a papyrus swamp. The ma'at feather on her head symbolized the goddess Isis, and the two horns symbolized the goddess Hathor. The three symbols in the ivory tablet mentioned by the author were number 1, the sun disk of Ra, number 2, the horned cow or bull with a feather on its head, and number 3, the papyrus swamp. The author showed two more figures, one in the bottom left and one in the bottom right, which he interpreted. But because these figures are no longer part of the ivory tablet of Jer, I will not be discussing them. Hathor was often depicted as a cow with stars, either standing or stooping in boats surrounded by tall papyrus reeds. Her iconography shows two horns with a sun disk of Ra in between them resting on the top of her head. This sun disk, which is always painted red, is why Hathor was one of several goddesses who acted as the eye of Ra, or Ra's feminine counterparts. It is said that Ra gave rise to his daughter, the eye goddess, who in turn gave rise to him as her son every dawn, in a cycle of constant regeneration. Thus, the eye of Ra goddess is both the daughter and mother of Ra. Now Apis was a sacred bull identified as the son of Hathor, and is believed to be the symbolism behind the constellation Taurus, the bull. Because Ra is the son of Hathor in her role as the eye of Ra, one can say that Apis or Taurus is a symbol of Ra. And just like Ra, Taurus also has two eyes, which are represented by stars. I mentioned earlier that Aldebaran was the right eye of Taurus, and therefore the right eye of Ra as well. I also mentioned that Epsilon Tauri, formerly named Ayin, which means eye in Arabic, is the left eye of Taurus, and therefore the left eye of Ra as well. Ayin is an orange giant star, while Aldebaran is a red giant. The eye of Horus, also known as the left wedge eye, is specular or the partner to the eye of Ra, the right wedge eye. Thus, one can say that the eye of Horus is the left eye of Ra, which is symbolized by the left eye of Taurus, or Ayin. If you look again at the ivory tablet of Jer, one can see that at its left side and horizontal to the sun of Ra, the right eye of Ra, there is an image of a falcon which represents Horus, and whose eye is also the left eye of Ra. Taurus lies on top of the constellation Eridanus, which is depicted in ancient sky charts as a flowing river. This is why Hathor, the mother of Apis, was also depicted as a cow, either standing or stooping in boats, surrounded by tall papyrus reeds growing in a flowing river. In the ivory tablet of Jer, this flowing river is represented by the papyrus swamp underneath the stooping cow of Taurus. Now Hathor is worshipped in the form of 7 Hathors. And these 7 goddesses are the Pleiades, a star cluster in the constellation Taurus. Thus, both Hathor and her son Apis are associated with Taurus, and I even believe that the right body half of Taurus is Hathor, while the left body half of Taurus is Apis. Ma'at's iconography shows the tail feather of the Bennu on her head, while holding the ankh and the papyrus staff that are also seen on Isis iconography. Now, the coffin text spell 1095 tells us explicitly that Isis is the same goddess as Ma'at. Looking back at the ivory tablet of Jer, the only symbol that represents the star Sopdet was the sun disk of Ra floating on top of the stooping bull. But my question is, why is the sun disk, and therefore the star Sopdet, always painted red? If Sopdet was Sirius, then it should be painted white, since Sirius appears white to the unaided eye. Also, there is historical evidence based on interpretations of ancient texts from several cultures, including Babylonian and Greco-Roman, that the redness of what was referred to by past astronomers as Sirius was deeper than that of the light orange color of Mars as recently as 2,000 years ago. This led some to conclude that because of this red Sirius anomaly, the star supposed to be Sirius at present may refer to some other red star in the past. The Egyptian astronomer Ptolemy described Sirius as Hippokeros, reddish in the Almagest circa 150 AD, and likened it in color to Aldebaran, Antares, Arcturus, Betelgeuse, and Pollux, stars that are, of course, known to be red today. This means the real Sirius could not have been Aldebaran, the right eye of Taurus either. Instead, I believe Ayin, the left eye of Taurus, an orange giant star, was the red Sirius, whose Greek name means scourging, as opposed to the star which ancient astronomers called Sopdet by the Egyptians or Sothis by the Greeks and Romans, and which I believe was Aldebaran. Also, I mentioned earlier that Ayin is one of 2 stars making up Al-Kalbain, or the 2 dogs asterism in Taurus. Thus, Ayin is also a dog star to ancient astronomers. Now note closely the club held by Orion located at the left side of Taurus, and compare it to the club seen on the ivory tablet of Jer and located at the left side of the horned bull. If Sirius was Sopdet, then the son of Ra, represented by Sopdet, should be positioned at the bottom left of the club in the ivory tablet, because this is also where Sirius is positioned relative to Orion's club in the sky. Sopdet has a son, the hawk and falcon god Sopdu, represented by Venus. Notice that Sopdet has a 5-pointed star on top of her head, and the pentagram is believed to represent the orbit of Venus as seen from Earth. Just like Sopdet, Isis also has a son, the falcon god Horus, whom I believe should be identified with Sopdu simply because Sopdet is also Isis. Therefore, just like Sopdu, Horus is represented by Venus as well. The Bennu was a symbol of rebirth, and Horus, Heru, son of Isis, was a form of Horus the Elder, Heru-Ur, son of Nut, the mother of Isis. Therefore, Horus is a rebirth of Horus the Elder, implying that both Horus and Horus the Elder were the Bennu that was used as a symbol of rebirth. Others say that the Bennu represents Osiris. However, Osiris was not reborn, but was only briefly resurrected by Isis, so she can give birth to Horus through Osiris. Because Venus and the Bennu are both symbols of Horus, I believe the Bennu feather is the hieroglyph image of the primordial Venus when Venus was appearing like a comet with a feather-like tail in the past. Looking at Comet McNaught, one can easily see why a feather can represent a comet. European Space Agency, when a planet behaves like a comet. The tail of Venus and the weak solar wind. During a rare period of very low-density solar outflow, the ionosphere of Venus was observed to become elongated downstream, rather like a long-tailed comet. Apparently, during the reign of Jer, the third pharaoh of the first dynasty, the solar outflow had a very low density, causing the ionosphere of Venus to become elongated like a long-tailed comet. Thus, in summary, the ivory tablet of Jer is telling us that the heliacal rise of Sopdet Isis, or Aldebaran, the sun disk of Ra between two horns, whose star rise signals the start of the flooding season, happened in the constellation Taurus, the stooping bull representing Apis, the son of Hathor, while Venus, the feather of Ma'at Isis, representing Horus, was between the two horns of Taurus on the day a new Sothic cycle started. Mehet Weret, whose name means great flood, is portrayed as a cow with a sun disk between her horns. And just like Hathor, Mehet Weret could be called the Eye of Ra as well. Hathor and Mehet Weret were both thought of as the cow who birthed the sun god and placed him between her horns each dawn. Mehet Weret also caused the annual Nile River flood. In my opinion, Mehet Weret is Hathor. Thus, while the heliacal rise of Sopdet Isis is a herald for the start of the flooding season, Akhet, the ancient Egyptians actually credited Hathor and not Isis for the flooding of the Nile. Nut was the mother of Isis, and I believe Nut was also Hathor for the following reasons. Hathor was given the epithets Mistress of the Sky and Mistress of the Stars, and was said to dwell in the sky as a celestial cow. Similarly, the sky goddess Nut is also depicted as a celestial cow, and Nut, just like Hathor, was said to give birth to the sun god Ra each dawn. Also, the welcoming afterlife goddess was often portrayed as a goddess in the form of a tree, giving water to the deceased. Nut most commonly filled this role, but the tree goddess was sometimes called Hathor instead. Accepting that Nut, mother of Horus the Elder, is also Hathor, and that Horus the Elder was reborn as Horus, son of Isis, will explain the unresolved paradox about the identity of Horus' mother, whether it was Isis or Hathor. This is because the twice-born Horus was both the son of Isis and the son of Hathor Nut when Horus was Horus the Elder. Wikipedia, Hathor, Motherhood and Queenship. Isis and Osiris were considered Horus' parents in the Osiris myth as far back as the late Old Kingdom, but the relationship between Horus and Hathor may be older still. If so, Horus only came to be linked with Isis and Osiris as the Osiris myth emerged during the Old Kingdom. Even after Isis was firmly established as Horus' mother, Hathor continued to appear in this role as Horus' mother. Now, if Nut was Hathor and Isis was the daughter of Nut, this means Isis was the daughter of Hathor, and since Sopdet was conflated with Isis, this means Sopdet was the daughter of Hathor. Now, why is it important to identify Hathor with Nut? Both Hathor and Nut play an important role in the last 5 days, or the epagomenal days preceding the Egyptian New Year. These days, also known as the Days of Demons, were added to the original 360-day calendar in order for the births of 5 children of Nut or Hathor to occur. These children are Osiris, Horus the Elder, Set, Nephthys, and Isis, and I ordered their names according to the order of their birthdays as observed during the Ptolemaic and Roman period. The 5 epagomenal days were considered to be spiritually dangerous, and the day Seth was supposed to be born, the third day, was particularly evil. During these 5 days, the pharaoh performed a ritual known as pacifying Sekhmet to protect himself and the world from that goddess plague. Sekhmet, who also wears the red sun disk of Ra on her head, is often associated with the goddess Hathor. In a myth about the end of Ra's rule on the earth, Ra sends the goddess Hathor in the form of Sekhmet to destroy mortals who conspired against him. The Hyades is a star cluster that appears in the constellation Taurus, where its brightest stars form a V shape along with the still brighter Aldebaran. This V-shaped asterism forms the head of Taurus. The Golden Gate of the ecliptic is an asterism in the constellation Taurus that has been known for several thousand years. The Golden Gate is built by the two eye-catching open star clusters of the Pleiades and the Hyades that form the two posts of a virtual gate at the two sides, the northern and the southern sides of the ecliptic line. From 4000 to 1500 BC, the equinox was within the constellation Taurus, and therefore the Golden Gate asterism was attached with great importance. This is especially true with the ancient Egyptians who worshipped Hathor in the form of 7 Hathors, where these 7 goddesses are the Pleiades. I will now list 5 of the brightest stars of Hyades, together with Aldebaran, followed by their current heliacal rise and the deities they represent. The observation site is in Tinis, Ger's capital, who was the first pharaoh to record the star rise of Sopdet at the start of the Sothic cycle. Delta 1 Tauri, a red star also known as Secunda Hyadum or the second of Hyades, heliacal rise June 16, birth of Osiris. Gamma Tauri, a red star also known as Prima Hyadum or the first of Hyades. Its heliacal rise is on June 17 and on the same day as the heliacal rise of Epsilon Tauri or Ayin, a red-orange star and the left eye of Taurus. The heliacal rise of these two stars represent the birthdays of Horus the Elder and Horus respectively. 71 Tauri, a yellow-white star, heliacal rise June 18, birthday of Set. Theta Tauri B, a red star also known as the third of Hyades, heliacal rise June 19, birthday of Nephthys. Alpha Tauri, a red star also known as Aldebaran and as Sopdet by the ancient Egyptians, heliacal rise June 20, birthday of Isis. Note that a Chinese asterism named Net includes 71 Tauri along with Delta, Gamma, Epsilon, Alpha, and Lambda Tauri. Of these stars, only Lambda Tauri is not part of the head of Taurus asterism, while Theta Tauri is omitted. Note also that only the star of Set, 71 Tauri, which rises on the third day of the 5 epagomenal days, is a yellow-white star, while the rest are all red stars. This may be the reason why the third day was considered particularly evil.